this is the story of how I met Jesus. When I was 19, I'm 29 now, I had a near-death experience where I had an encounter with God. I was in the hospital for what doctors thought was viral meningitis, but it never came back fully conclusive. And for any skeptics out there, which I totally understand, if you think this was a hallucination or something like that, you're correct in that I was on a ton of drugs while I was in the hospital, a lot of narcotics. So I had morphine and Tylenol with codeine through IV. I also was being given Percocet every couple hours. So in this story, I really don't remember anything. There's just total blackness. So there's not really a timeline for you, but there's total blackness. And then all of a sudden I'm in the presence of God, which is the brightest white light you could never even imagine. I knew that if I was seeing this with my human eyes, I would literally be a speck of dust. And I immediately felt just this peace and love that really does not exist, like just this emotion that doesn't exist this side of the spiritual realm at all whatsoever, or on earth. It just doesn't. And so in the presence of God, I immediately know that's what's going on, and I say, God, am I dead? Am I dying? And he says, why do you think that? And I said, I became very frustrated with him, and I said, just tell me, am I dead? And he goes, well, I want you to tell me why you think that, Landon. And I said, well, I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't go to the bathroom. All that I'm doing here is breathing. And he says, I understand why you say that. You can come here if you want to, but if you do, here's what's going to happen. And automatically, we're at my funeral. I see my childhood pastor I grew up with walking out of the wing, if you will, up onto the stage. I see on the projection screens pictures of myself from the time I'm a baby up until time of death, if you will, 19 years old. To the right, I can't make out faces or see exactly who it is, but I know that in all of these pews here are friends and family. And then in another instant, we're just on top of my parents, and they're holding each other, and they are bawling, crying, and just filled with grief, as you can imagine. And I became very upset because what's so strange is that I knew in that moment that God was telling me that I needed to go back to earth, that it wasn't my time to come into heaven. And I was upset with that because when I tell you this peace and love that I felt is out of this literal world, it's out of this literal world. And I did not want to leave that. I did not want to leave his presence. I also did not feel a sense of separation really from my family. I remember thinking in my spirit, if they knew what I know, then they wouldn't be sad. And so I said to God in my frustration in that moment, I said, I've seen enough, please take me away from this. And then I'm back in the white presence, if you will. And it's so pure, it's not even white. It's like, it would literally disintegrate you if you saw it like this. And I said, I understand what you're saying, but in 3 days, I either want to be dead or I want to be okay. And what I meant by okay was I just wanted to be in my right mind and in my consciousness, because I couldn't really talk to anybody, didn't know what was going on. Obviously, I wasn't in a coma or anything like that, but I'm like blacked out from these narcotics. And when I tell you, I was in excruciating, like I want to die pain. That's how bad it was. It really was. And he says to me, okay, 3 days, goes black. Next thing I remember is waking up. My granddaddy's looking over me. I look at him and I say, hey, granddaddy. Tears start flowing. He's crying and he goes, oh my gosh, she's back. She's back. And that was my experience of my encounter with the Lord. So I believed in Jesus before this. I believed in Jesus after this, and I believe in Jesus now. So when I was in the hospital, I got taken back to have a spinal tap, and I looked with what I thought was my physical eyes down a hallway, and I saw a doctor walking towards me who's in blue doctor's scrubs. So all I could see was, he had on a blue mask, totally scrubbed out, the shoe covers, the whole deal. And he's walking towards me, totally normal. And as he gets closer, he holds out his hands by his sides, like this, as he's getting closer to me. And I noticed that there's some deep tissue scarring that he has. So it was like right here, just really deep tissue scarring on both of his hands. It almost looked like if you see someone who gets burned really severely and their skin heals, just that scarring and that pulling. And then he, walks up to me, and in my hospital bed, my head is here and I'm on my stomach because I'm about to get a spinal tap. So my body is laying this way. So head to legs that way. And the doctor is here. And then he walks to this side of my body, and I am looking at him like this, and I realize that I'm actually not in my physical body, right? Because I'm looking like this. And I look up, and we lock eyes, and I immediately knew that it was Jesus. It was the most overwhelming feeling and experience that I've ever had in my life. And he just was looking at me, and I could tell that he was smiling under his mask, like a closed mouth, like just warm smile, even though I couldn't see it. His eyes were like a green kind of color. He had brown, kind of wavy, curled, like crimped hair. Looked Arab. He looked Middle Eastern, which, is where he's from. So of course that's, his ethnicity, as he walked the earth. And so we meet eyes, and then he takes his hands like this, and he turns towards me, and I'm still facing him this way, and I'm looking at my body, and he slowly lowers his hands, and as soon as he touches my body, it's the most overwhelming feeling that I can only describe as Jesus Christ just touched you. And I immediately go back into my body and have the spinal tap. And that has been the most profound spiritual experience and encounter that I've ever had in my life. And I can tell you that the love of Jesus Christ that I felt in that moment, and the peace, even reflecting on it now, just normal day-to-day life, earthside, if you will, it's overwhelming, even like feeling a portion of that, retelling the story. But in that moment, that is the best experience that I've ever had. And I hope that no one goes through the circumstances that I went through, but I do hope that if you've never met Jesus Christ before or had an encounter with him, that you open your heart up to seeking him and getting to know him, and just asking him if he'll reveal himself to you.